Nothing I can really talk about right now, but some stuff that might be very impactful on comics. But in between that, I think I'm actually going to take a break to write more comics. Like, kind of like you, just like sit down and just like pump it all out and then come back. So it might be a while before you hear something new from me.
I work for a company called A Wave Blue World. So projects will be announced, and in terms of an editor, those are the kinds of projects: raising voices, different stories, young adult stories, some near future stories, really stories about hope fiction. The theme of the company is stories that show us that we're going to make it to the future and the journeys of how we're going to do it together or not. And then the historical fiction graphic novel I told you about will be announced by the end of the year. It will be something that will appeal to people outside of comics because it touches the life of someone that touched a lot of lives, and that will hopefully be coming out in October of next year, and that's going to be pretty exciting.
Thank you. At this point, does anyone have any questions for, oh, lots of questions, all right. Let's start here.
Hi, my name is Christian.
Hey, Christian.
So I just wanted to ask a question. It was brought up about making other people of color and sexualities and genders. Besides, asking friends or acquaintances if this is correct or not, do you do like extensive research, like maybe looking up books, online articles or videos and things like that? Because like I want to do something like that because I'm a comedy major, but I want to do video games and other things. And it's really lacking that there isn't like people who are LGBT, women, and people of color in those mediums.
Right. Yeah, I mean, again, that's the job of being a writer. It's like research, which I know doesn't sound like the sexy part of it. Like everybody thinks they're in a cafe coming up with ideas out there. Other times you're actually in the library or online. So one of the books that I came up with for H1 Comics Ignited, the catalyst of the story is that some teens survive a school shooting, and that's how they develop superpowers. And in our times, that's a very challenging topic to address and do so respectfully. So it was a lot of prep in order to like get that story right, in order to tell that story like in a way that wasn't going to just be sensational, but really talk about like how that impacts and affects people. And it's not a short thing, so even though that's the catalyst in the story, we're telling like the long-term effects of that, but with that layer of science fiction on top of it. So I think when it comes to that sort of thing, it's just, be thorough. Like go deep, find out as much as you can about the topic that you're pursuing in your story and try to become something of an expert, and then test it against people who are experts. Like, did I get this right? It's like, am I close? Am I wrong? I think that's the best way to go.
Yeah, the research is a big part of the job. But also when you're portraying other people that aren't yourself, realize you live in New York City, so you're like in one of the most diverse cities in the world. So use the resources that the city gives you. And I mean, look at this school, man. Like your school is so diverse. Everyone in here is something different. Ask questions. I ask a lot of questions. Sometimes I annoy the shit out of people, but it's okay. It's in the service of the art. Ask lots of questions.
Yeah, you definitely have to do a lot of reading. You have to know, okay, what subjects am I focusing on here, and pursue those subjects. It would be a shame if you don't have enough of a personal community that you can go to. But one thing that you can find, kind of like the bridge between research and personal experiences, is memoirs. When you're trying to explore a lifestyle or a story that deals with that, if you read the real story of someone who lived through it, you can learn so much about what they had to go through, that, you know, it can be the beginning of informing your understanding of things. So, yeah, that research is inescapable, but personal stories can have a lot of value in a way that, you know, too long don't read articles on a subject can have.
More questions?
Thank you for such great comments and analysis. I want to go back to this tension between authenticity and imagination, because in some ways I feel like as people of color we often get bound by authenticity, and you talked about it in the work, so that, oh no, you can't do this because it's not authentic enough, and somebody who never knows nothing about your culture is telling you what that is. But I want to know if you can answer that as artists, certainly being in a medium that on the one hand, a lot of people of color, and I'll just focus on Black people for a moment, a lot of Black people are consuming, and yet when it comes to creativity, it gets constructed as something that we don't do, even though there are people doing it, but there becomes this tokenism and these limitations. So I want to know if you could talk a little bit about how you negotiate that. And then going back to the point about making sure that that you're good, that your friends are good, that everybody's good. Can you also talk a little bit about risk? I've gone to predominantly white schools. I mean, I'm old now, but I went to predominantly white schools all of my life, so I was surrounded by white men who failed every day. And we're still rewarded, and we're told, okay, go fail again, fail some more. Your failure is beautiful, you know. And you know, our students here are so brilliant and so careful, and in some ways they're almost too careful. They're not spreading their wings wide enough. So how do we, as educators, I guess I'm asking because I'm a faculty member here, but for our students, how do they, you know, engage that commitment to excellence and discipline and talent, but also feel free to risk and fail and soar, because that's what we really want from them. They're so brilliant. We want them to know it, and we want to see them risk and fall and get up again and just keep trying. And how do we do that, and how have you done that? Because you have all obviously done that. Thank you.
I had a very interesting waking moment that had nothing to do with my comic book career technically, but had to do with my career, where much like yourself, like seeing like the general, or like what's considered the norm, be rewarded for failure. And I'm sure you probably have all heard the phrase like, God give me the confidence of a straight white man. So I took that and I said, I'm gonna start stunting and act exactly that way. You know, and it came from seeing, like, it was on LinkedIn, and I was looking at people who were executives at a company that I was at, and I was like, man, this dude's been here for like 8 months, this woman's been here for like a year and like 6 months. It's like, I'm always told that like, you have to put in this amount of time, you have to do this certain thing, you have to stay in this lane in order to like achieve. And it was, you know, still being respectful of reality and being a brown person, I was like, well, what if I don't? What if I don't acknowledge that? What if I like just start behaving and going after things in a way that like I want to? And I've been lucky enough to find success. It's kind of weird. I had a second version of that at a job too, where it's like there was this editor I was working with, and this guy is a white guy and stuff like that, and he just didn't give a fuck, like at work, and was, you know, promoted. So that he was a nice guy. He wasn't like nasty about it. And I asked him one day, I was like, yo man, how do you navigate this job? Because they stressing me out and stuff like that. He's like, yo, I've been trying to get fired for like 3 years. And when he said that, I was like, all right, I'm doing this wrong. Right. And so I'm not walking through like constantly with that, but I think especially now, like what I said about like you have a lot more avenues now. There's a lot of stuff coming at us, a lot of negativity, but there's also a lot less constraints. There's a lot more paths towards success and towards like reaching your goal than there ever were before, and you just have to be bold enough. Like it's gonna be hard. I'm not saying it's gonna be easy at all, but you just have to like take that leap and like be ready to fail, just like anybody, just like those people you described, because
sometimes I don't care if I get it right. I'm just going to put the idea out there. I'm just going to do my thing. And if I get it wrong, I'll just own up to it.
So I think there's two things. Number one, we have to reframe our definition of what failure is. Failure is not trying and not achieving the goal. Failure is not trying at all. That's failure, right? Failure is not learning from mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. If you don't learn from them and you repeat history again and again and again, that to some degree is failure. But like cutting your knee, not creating the perfect sentence, that's not failure. So we need to reframe the definition of that. And the second thing is we need to start sharing our stories of failure with each other, right? I worked at a company, I had a high position there. Someone said to me, "You are the most powerful black man in comics." That job lasted 9 months. That could be considered a failure. But you know what? That was a spectacular failure. Because I don't half fail. I fail explosively. And the things that I learned from that, I'm going to take at the next job and I'm going to be better at it. But if I had never taken a chance at that out of fear, I wouldn't have learned anything. And there's this term that is plaguing us now called imposter syndrome, where we don't believe that we can do it. And the fact of the matter is, most of us don't know. Most of us don't know, and most of the people that you consider successful, they did not get there through playing it safe. They got there through getting scars and getting cuts and taking hits. But what did they learn from it? It's just like when you work out. You know, you work out in a gym, that pain that you feel, that's literally muscles ripping. Your muscles are ripping. But you're sleeping, and when you sleep, the proteins and the carbohydrates and everything that you did, your muscles are literally restitching in your body as you sleep. And when you wake up, you're stronger. We only get stronger through adversity. That's it. We don't get better through comfort.
Make it till you make it.
Yeah, pretty much. I would say when you're working in a corporate environment and sometimes you have to play the game, sometimes you gotta be a little sneaky about that shit. You know, like, like there's been plenty of times when like, you know, they were like, draw this. And I was like, nah, but that's dumb. I don't know. I know better than you. So, you know, and Joe he's probably not gonna want to hear this, but sometimes you gotta be like, all right, editor, you know, you got that, you know, but then on the low, you kind of sneak your little, you sneak what you're doing in. You know, there was, for example, I'll give you an example. There was a book where I had to design a certain character, right? And they wanted the character to be a certain race. And I was just like, yeah, but everyone in this book is like kind of white. Like, can we do something else? And they were like, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, all right, sure, no problem. So I made her like half white. But over the course of the book, I kind of made her more and more ethnic. So you find ways around it. You still, you got, sometimes to keep your job, you have to do what corporate says. But I mean, sneaking in a little bit, you know, it's fine. Whatever.
Yeah, so thanks.
You're good, man. You're good.
No, thanks for the great discussion. I wanted to ask a question about something the gentleman at the end here said about Senator King. I'm not going to get into lengthy reasons why, but as someone who was resistant to the idea of sort of like replacing a white character with an ethnic character for whatever the reason might be, unless it's something that's legitimately organic. Do you believe that you could have created that character without necessarily making her Batgirl, and people would have embraced it for whatever the reason? Because she was, you know, she's a dope character, full stop. There's no reason to make, like I said, like I like the fact that people have embraced Miles Morales, but I don't necessarily want Peter Parker to go away.
Right.
I don't want Tony Stark to be replaced by Riri Williams. I like the two of them together. So I think that in a lot of these cases, there's a case to be made for a black character or a Latino character to thrive on their own merits, as opposed to, oh, let's bring them in to make a statement, because then they become a diversity hire, and then the backlash is, you know, it's predictable. So if you could sort of address that idea that Cassandra Cain was a great character, and did she have to be Batgirl, or was there a way to introduce her without necessarily having her replace, I don't know, Stephanie Brown or
Yeah, it was Marvin Gordon at the time. That's a great question. I'm going to do a very dangerous thing to my future, and I'm going to answer it honestly.
I was hoping you would.
I'm going to answer it honestly. The publishers of now do not know how to introduce a character of color as an original character and make that character stick with our public consciousness. And it's not that they don't try, but it's because the councils of power lack diverse voices. If the governing bodies of what are considered the most powerful companies in the American superhero comic book structure had a council that was more akin to like the United Nations, then in the beginning of the conversations, in the beginning of the creation of a Miles Morales, the creation of a Cassandra Cain, the creation of a Riri Williams, or a Kamala Khan, those ideas would come into play, these discussions would be had. So when you launched a character, you launched a character strong, you launched a character authentic. But because the point of view is culturally monolithic, their capacity to do that is limited. And so they have to pimp Iron Man, they have to pimp Spider-Man, they have to pimp Batgirl. They have to use these established icons as the ambassador concepts for all of you, so that you can fall in love with them and then they can break them off. The companies don't know how to do it yet. They will know how to do it once they have more of us at the table at the inception of these characters. And what I'm telling you, it's not even an opinion. You can look at publishing for the last 15 years, and what you're seeing is factual. They don't know how to launch original characters without using the icons as the ambassador concepts. Where you see it happening successfully, actually, is in the independent circles, like Excellence. Like Brandon Thomas and Khary Randolph knew how to launch Excellence. The top powers at DC and Marvel would not have known how to launch Excellence, because Excellence speaks so much to an experience that they don't know. But if you have someone in the room that knows that experience, that it's there at the very beginning. So once those top bodies of power diversify, then you'll be able to do it, but not before that.
Spark up. 3 other questions.
I do agree with the idea of a lot of the new characters become legacy characters with strong. Have you guys read the DC Bendis' book Naomi?
No, it's not.
Yeah, I've read 2 issues, two out of the 6.
It's become.
I have them all.
It's become hugely popular. Like, it's one of their best-selling books, and it's a really interesting original character that DC. It's one of the first original characters DC's done in a very long time. Every comic was 30 years.
Right.
My question actually was, aside from that, like who were some influence, like people that influenced you when you wanted to, where you were coming up? Like, I'm a big fan of a million different artists, but I was curious, who inspired you guys when you were first coming up from wherever you started from?
Before anybody answers that question, I want to correct you on something. You mentioned Brian Michael Bendis. You did not mention David Walker. David Walker is the co-writer and co-creator of Naomi, and David Walker is black. So part of the reason Naomi succeeded is because David Walker was there, and because the artist Jamal Campbell is black. So Naomi is an example of what I said to you, that the people who were there at the beginning in part represented the experience, and that's why Naomi was able to do it, not Miles Morales. Miles Morales, an Afro-Latino character, was created by Brian Michael Bendis and Sarah Pichelli. Riri Williams, a black girl from Chicago, was created by Brian Michael Bendis and somebody else. So that's why. In terms of inspiration, Dwayne McDuffie will always be an inspiration for me. I mean, my God, there are too many people. You mentioned Jordan Peele. Christopher. I mean, that list is so long. Like honestly, like we could be here for another 2 hours. But I mean, look, man. I mean, today Elijah Cummings passed away. Yeah. Right, and that's a guy who knew that he was a servant to society and always believed that the system could be made better. Like it can work if we make it work. Those kinds of things are like inspiring. Like you're having a bad day, and here's a guy who like spent like half to most of his life like fighting to make a better nation and to make a better system. Like that's inspiring.
Yeah, and as far as like characters like Naomi, like it's one of those things. It's like if the people who aren't there, who created it, aren't there at the company anymore, will she still be in the DC universe? I'm not gonna put any chips on that. So that's I'm like.
This is the question.
More of like who were like
who inspired me?
Yeah.
One of the first artists that really inspired me, and I wrote a thing about this one time, was Brian Stelfreeze, because I remember being in Joe's office one time, and at the time Brian was doing covers for, was it Shadow of the, what was the book?
Shadow of the Bat.
Shadow of the Bat, yeah. And there were these like amazing, fully painted covers that come in every month. And I would just be like poring over this stuff, like, yo, this is amazing. I've never seen anything like this before. And I didn't know that Brian was black. Like, I just was like, this guy's awesome. And then like, I don't know why, like, it's messed up, I think, but like, in my brain, I defaulted to him being a white guy. And I realized after the fact how messed up that was, that my favorite artist, I just assumed he was a white dude, and I was like, oh no, this guy's one of the best artists comics has ever seen, and he's a black man. And so it kind of rewired my brain a little bit, and I was like, I want to be like that guy, you know what I'm saying? Like, I want to be that guy who inspires me so much that, one, I wasn't even thinking about race. It's just, he's just such a phenomenal artist, first and foremost, when I first met him, I had to actually thank him and be like, I couldn't speak because I was just like, yo, I can't talk to you right now, you're too good. But it was very important to me that he existed and that I could thank him for the courage he gave in myself to be like, I want to be like that dude.
You can thank him for everything that he dope visually in Black Panther.
That too.
Yeah,
right.
He did the Ta-Nehisi Coates book, man, and
right.
he like redefined visually a lot of like what that character looked like.
And conceptually, like he came up with ways to utilize the Wakandan technology. I think he was the one that came up with the idea.
The kinetic purple suit.
Yeah, that if vibratory waves can, be used outward, then he could literally use the suit to repel things. I don't think Ta-Nehisi came up with that. Stealth Freeze came up with that. So like artists are thinkers. And what we can't do, what we can't do is say, stay in your lane. Like, I'm the writer, I don't need you to give me any ideas or character story, right? Or I'm the artist, I don't need you to talk to me about visuals. Like, it's all like the same lane, right? And funny thing about Stealth Freeze, who is the GOAT, he's the greatest of all time, a really humble guy. He and I were exchanging some texts, and I told Khary this. He's a fan of excellence. So the circle has closed. Yeah. So game knows game and quality knows quality, right?
Thank you all for sharing. I just had 2 questions. As creatives, I just had to know out of curiosity. Joaquin Phoenix Joker or Heath Ledger Joker? You guys answer it honestly. I'm so curious about this.
I haven't seen the new Joker yet, so I don't know, but I do like that kind of character exploration. I'll probably have to see it at home because I ain't trying to be in the theater.
I get that scary experience in theaters, so I understand. So then, on to my other question. There's many things, in my opinion, that are pressuring your creative process. Politics, as you've spoken of in the workplace, corporate structures that don't really align with who you are as people. But also the fact that you're black, we'll start with that as well. But also the fact that you're men. There's other personal burdens, you may have families, things of that nature that all pressure your creative process. In that, how do you still create?
The pressure is there, but look, there's 2 things. One, I feel like if I'm not doing these things, who's gonna do it? So that's one of the ways I approach these things. Like, I have specific things I want to say, and if I don't see other people saying it, then I'm not gonna wait. I'm not gonna just wait. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's important to me to get these feelings or thoughts out of my brain and onto the paper and get them seen. That's why I do these things. Also, I gotta pay my rent, so I got deadlines, man. Like, it's a powerful motivator when your rent is coming every month, so you gotta keep creating stuff. So that's the easy part.
No, that's real. Because unlike these gentlemen, comic books is my side hustle. Like, I have a day job that I have to be at like 8 hours a day, and like for me, it's like my phone is like how I just keep it moving. Like, I've written entire scripts on the subway on my phone and stuff like that. People think I'm texting and stuff, and it's just like, no, it's an idea that's sparked in my head. But like what Khary was saying, it's like, you're an artist, you're driven. Like, I can't make time, but I somehow find time. So if it's like I get up in the morning at like 6, I'll sit down and just write what's in my head. When I'm having like some coffee, I'm just like one thumb typing if I can. It's just you're compelled to do it. So that's kind of what keeps you going. And for me, it's not even about like the end goal. Like, yeah, my day job, that pays the rent, the mortgage, and all that stuff. But the drive for me is like, I want to tell these stories. I want to get this down on paper, and that's just going to happen no matter what. So even if some of this stuff didn't make money, like, I would still be doing it because it's just what I'm compelled to do.
Yeah. So for me, frustration is fuel, right? Like, if I'm pissed off about a situation, I'm going to put that into the work, right? I'm going to channel it. I'm going to convert it. I have no choice, or it's going to rip me apart. Working out helps. Showers. A lot of ideas, a lot of neurons fire differently when you're taking a shower because just like there's no external noise. It's you, and it's silent, and you're calm, and you're like, hey, that's the solution. That eating is very important because if your brain is tired, like, you know what I mean, like you can't think, you know what I mean?
Coffee.
You know, I'm not a coffee drinker. I'm one of the few weird Americans that does not drink coffee. I can't speak to the power. I have had caffeine. I get why, but I'm just not a caffeine person. I'll say one other thing. This goes back to a previous question. I read a book recently called The Obstacle is the Way. And basically what that book teaches you is that something that you think is a wall is actually a window to a solution, right? So what you can find is that you think something is a problem, you think something is a constraint, and what it actually can be is an opportunity for you to flex, an opportunity for you to introduce a new idea, or an opportunity for you to reframe something so you can see your way around it. Yeah? So I would highly recommend everyone read that book. You read that book and it just teaches you how to reframe something, right? Because you talk about working in corporate America as a black man, right? So you're like, oh, you know, like I've got to deal with that. But on the other hand, you have a perspective that like 50 other people don't have. What can you do with that at a meeting? What can you do with that at a project? What can you do with that to distinguish yourself as a human being so that you're not just one of the board?
Nice nerd reference, right?
Well, you know, we are talking geek stuff.
Okay, we've got time for maybe 1-2 more questions.
This question is a little bit more of like a Dwayne McDuffie kind of question. I remember seeing you on an AMC documentary talking about how Dwayne McDuffie used to fight a lot with DC editors with like certain comics being released, especially one in particular with Static Shock, and
Yes.
I think it was Icon's assistant, his sidekick, because she got pregnant or something like that.
Rocket.
And Rocket, yes. So I was wondering, why do we see so much pushback on topics like that, especially with people of color, when we have comics that come out like Green Arrow and Speedy using cocaine? Why was there such a big pushback on that overall, where Dwayne McDuffie has to like fight tooth and nail just to get that issue out, compared to something where you see a young white kid just taking heroin or something like that?
Yeah, no, I mean,
They're real.
okay, why don't you go first?
Wait.
Okay.
And I feel like you might confirm it, but have you ever felt that like there's a fear from that institution of portraying us in any of the stereotypes that they buy into? You know, so like those characters are often very clean cut, very perfect, very nondescript, you know? So I think maybe that's it, but...
I definitely think that's part of it, because since the institutions have been criticized before for those portrayals, they don't want to take a chance at doing them because they're like, well, you couldn't possibly do better, even though that's from your lifestyle. So right, there's a risk. It's called being risk averse, right? Corporations by nature, certain ones are risk averse, right? So there's that. There's the thing that we have to fight for everything from the moment we wake up until the moment we go to bed, and it starts all over again the next day. So here's, I think, the bigger answer. The bigger answer, and this is where that kind of coalescent moment where Get Out, Black Panther, like there were certain things that came out within a certain period of time. And what they did was they confirmed that the marginalization of our stories was a lie. That being told that your stories can't sell, that's a lie. That your experiences can't sell, that's a lie. So he had to push on those stories because he was being told those stories were a risk, right? He pushed for them because he knew that that was real life. And so he was willing to take the risk to portray real life. And as you pointed out, Rocket was pregnant in the 90s, it was an issue. Spider-Woman was pregnant 3 months ago, and oh, that was so progressive. Spider-Woman's pregnant, that's awesome. Yeah, it's not really awesome. So basically, I think what it comes down to is the system wants to continue to convince us that our stories do not have the equal social validity or financial validity of other stories. And we are basically now right at the point where that is a known global lie. And so now we're about to turn a corner into something else.
So I just want to take a second to say thank you to you guys, but also to all of the City Tech students that are in the room. Can you guys just raise your hands for a second if you are an alumni or currently go to City Tech? High up. Come on, back row. Yeah, I know. I'm
Thank
looking
you
at
all
you.
for coming.
Right?
And taking time away from your study.
Right before midterms. So the reason that I did that is because there's some very silent voices in the room, City Tech students. This is a really unique opportunity, but I really feel like a lot of the people who are asking the questions are not the students.
I actually do want to ask.
There we go. All right. This is what I'm looking for.
Yes.
We're here. Yes. Julie, take it.
I decided to take your advice right now about just jumping out and doing something that scares you, which is just being in the spotlight. I wanted to ask about, on the subject of making friends in the field, how do you go about doing that and making connections and keeping it? Yeah, it's pretty great.
Great question.
So that is a crucial thing, I would say, is to have connections and people that have your back. My whole career has been built off of the friendships and the relationships that I have. Even in terms of people you go to school with right now, they might wind up being very important people in whatever you want to do in the future. But social media is great. I mean, it's terrible. But also, it has its benefits, which is a lot of the friends that I have in comics right now, I've made through social media. Early on, before, Twitter and Facebook, some of my best friends I met through message boards where I was just like, you know what, I don't feel my art is strong enough yet. So I went to art message boards where I'd be like, hey, here's my art, please critique it, please tell me how to get better. And through those message boards, I found some of my best friends through that kind of adversity. And then I wound up getting jobs because those same people saying, hey man, I can't do this job to this editor, but I know this other guy, Khary, who can do this job very well. And that is how a lot of jobs happen. People give referrals. I say, Joe might ask me, what do you think about so-and-so? And I'm like, yeah, he's pretty good, or no, maybe not so much, he's kind of a dick. But that's real talk. And so you're
talking about me?
Say to you.
Nah, it's your relationships are everything, and so you treat everyone. I treat everyone as respectfully as I can because you never know. You see some people in comics who are just straight up not nice people, and they can be the best artists in the world, but if no one wants to work with you, then that's going to limit how much work you're going to get. So it's true, your relationships are everything. And the great thing about Comic-Cons is it's a room full of people that are all into stuff that you're into. So, I understand being an introvert, because I'm an introvert myself. But in those environments, everyone's a nerd, man, so it's fine. Like, people are happy to talk about whatever issue, whatever book you're reading. You can find that person. And once you find those people, you find common interests and you build off of that.
Oh, that's accurate. I don't even have anything to ask about that.
Yeah, I mean, wow, Khary covered a lot of it. Being a person that, being a nice person helps a lot. The times when I've been nice have helped people gravitate towards me, and the times when I have been, to use a word that you use, so I feel like I can use it, a dick, that has sent people away. One of the things that I just try to do is We've got a lot of bad stuff going on, so when you talk about social media, I just really try to spread good. Like share good stories, say good things. If I don't like something, I don't have to knock it down. I don't have to knock down an idea. I don't have to knock down a person. That's just you being weak and trying to make yourself feel strong. Like say something good. So there's that, just like who you are as a human being. It makes people want to be with you. And another thing is, going to the introvert thing, I grew up that way too as a teenager. I mean, man, when I was a teenager, like no one knew who Thanos was. Now everyone knows who Thanos is. No one knew what Crisis on Infinite Earths was, and I was told, like, Joe, you're not gonna get sex if you keep talking about comic books. Deal with you, like real stuff, man. And no, real. And a friend gave me this advice, and I kind of translated it in life. Like, I was afraid to talk to girls, and the friend said, well, the worst thing a girl can say to you is no. Like, if you can survive that, you're okay. So that's kind of like life, right? Like, I know it's tough to put yourself out there. There is a risk that someone will not like you. Other people are going to like you. Other people are going to want to be around you. And you're going to find that you're actually not alone, that you think you're alone in a room, and there's 5 other people like you, and they're afraid too. And someone's just got to say, hey, how you doing? So you're not alone in your fear. Most of us are actually afraid.
Got some more questions? All right, Money.
Hey.
Hello.
So I guess my question is involving this idea of burnout. How do you deal with it? And also there's this kind of ideas that's like kind of difficult to deal with, that people of color, since you have to work extra hard, it's almost as if you don't get the luxury of a burnout, or this almost luxury to take a break, because it's always this push just to get to equilibrium when like run-of-the-mill white man can just do it flex without actually flexing.
I'm burnt out right now. I mean, that's just kind of like a constant. But the fun thing is like when you feel like you're burnt out, sometimes that's just your brain like telling you to chill for a bit, and then all of a sudden it rekindles. So I've found that every time when I feel like I'm kind of at my end, or it's just like, stop asking me to create anything. I got nothing for you. It's like when I shut down, take a break from it for a bit, all the wheels start spinning again. And you don't have to force it all the time. Sometimes you do because you got a deadline, so crack it out. But it's okay to take a break. It's okay to feel like, I don't really have anything to say right now, because if you're pursuing this art, like, I tend to believe it's gonna come out at some point.
I mean, burnout is real. I think for me, and that's the interesting thing, people always ask me what comic books do I read. When I'm not making stuff, I'm usually trying to do anything else that's not comics to kind of reinvigorate my batteries. So if that's going to see a movie or watch a TV series or even playing some video games or just working out, those are kind of the ways that I refresh my batteries, because burnout is a real thing, but like because of the pace of what we do, sometimes you don't have time to like be tired. You just gotta get through it. But yeah, that's part of the reason why I don't read as many comics as I wish I was. But that's just because if I was consuming comics all day long, I'd want to murder myself. So you gotta get away from it and do other stuff.
Yeah. Take time for yourself. You're actually entitled to it. Like, society wants to tell you that you're not. That if you take a break, you're missing an opportunity, someone else is gonna get it. That's wrong. Self-care is important. For my wife and I, it could be as simple as saying, hey, let's go watch an episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine or The Good Place, right? And just that break, right? It's just like, okay, now let's go to bed. Wake up the next morning, you recharge. What Khary said about working out, I highly recommended, whether it's at a gym, whether it's not, endorphins get firing, you come out of it, I mean, just chemically, like you feel different and you've accomplished something, and it's a great way to relieve stress. But ultimately it's self-care. And here's a thing, those white men that you were talking about that are flexing, they're shredding themselves too. Like, they are not superhuman, right? They're not doing it all the time, all the time, all the time. They're shredding themselves, they're going to therapists, they have mommy issues, just like all of us. We're all actually the same, and the myth that you have to be superhuman to keep up with somebody else, it is true in a way because we're people of color, or if you're, if you're a woman, or if you're non-binary. These things are true, but don't believe in this myth that you're suffering and no one else is suffering. Or it's hard for me, but it's easy for them. Like, almost everything, especially on social media, is an illusion. Like, that's the truth.
Questions?
I just want to follow up on the idea there. I find that it's really easy for like artists and people who are doing what they love to be exploited, because you feel like you should be doing it because you love it, but you still got to pay your rent, you still got to eat. So do you have any advice for a young artist coming up, how to advocate for themselves and how to not get exploited?
I think Hank Hill said it best, right? Hank Hill from Goodfellas, fuck you, pay me. That's it. Nothing done on spec. Like, pay what you're worth. Like, I actually had, I was working at this boutique agency in my day career, and a gentleman who had been like, an EVP at like Pepsi and stuff like that, he was a Latino man, and he said to me, he's like, we were talking about my position in the company, he's like, yo, we're always asking for less. He's like, statistically, he's like, and just generally, it's like, as a person, it's like, ask for more than you're worth. The worst thing that can happen to you is they come down. So like, he's like, shoot for the moon and like, maybe you'll get like the earth, But it's like, don't start down here ever for anything. And I think it's the same for like artists. It's like, I gave some advice to, and I'll put this out in the room for anybody. A creative friend of mine was about to do some work at DC, and I was just like, all right, I don't know what project you're working on, but if it's Batman, ask for as much money you humans can get. Batman always has money. If they tell you they don't have money, they're lying. It's like, that brand always has dollars. And it worked for him. He was able to get like a higher page rate. So it's just like, just know your worth, Don't do anything for free.
Yeah. Wow, that's really tricky, for a young person starting out. Whoa, that's tough. So I think it's important that in any business you're in, any field, right? You go into advertising, you go into comic books, like, do research and talk to people in the business. Like Khary said, that's one of the great things about comic book conventions is you get to meet like people in the business. Do some research. Hey, what's a starting rate, right? Or you know what? Like, we have Google. You could literally type like starting rates of comic books, and you will get links to sites that will break it all down for you. Yeah, it will break it down. So do some research into any business you want to get in. And as Kwanza said, like, know the value of your work, because one of the things that's important about negotiation is confidence. And when you're talking about artists, businesses try to gaslight artists into thinking their art is not worth what it is. You have to know that it has a certain worth, and you have to be confident enough to say, this is what it's worth. If you're not going to pay that, I'm not going to do business. And
be okay with that.
Right, definitely. There's a fear of saying no, but people who sometimes say no get more respect than people who always say yes. Because businesses need to know you have a line, right? Last thing, if possible, agent or lawyer. You can be in college, you should start thinking about an agent right now. Graphic novels are exploding, especially at book publishers. Whether they're in print, whether they're on the web, there are agents out there that are looking to find you. They're looking to help nurture you. Seek them out. It's okay to start right now.
I can't lie, I don't have any yet.
but you have the day gig, and black is such a success. Like Kwanza's black.
And you know agents.
I know.
Exactly.
He's lying.
I just don't have time to talk to you.
I'm just gonna add to that, even though I'm not on the panel, always have a contract. I know that sounds really obvious, but always, always, always have a contract. Don't do anything for free, even if it's your family.
Yep.
Especially if it's your family.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
I would just like to ask, what would you say to an artist who's a little bit of an overthinker? Like, am I doing this wrong? Am I doing that wrong? Like, should I be doing this? Like, if your mind is talking too much, sorry, I'm an overthinker right now.
It's cool. There's nothing but a bunch of squirrels running around up here, man.
Yeah. What do you think of an overthinker? You're good.
So here's the deal with art, right? You're never gonna be done with a piece, and it's never gonna be good enough. Like, that is just how art works.
Yeah.
And you have to be okay with that. Like, at some point, it's you're gonna hit that deadline when stuff has to get done, and you have to be as finished as it can be. And then you just say, all right, well, I guess that's it. Like, it's for real. Like, I could, honestly, every one of these pieces on this wall, I could point out a flaw or something I could have done better, something I wasn't happy with, and you just have to be okay with it. Yeah. It's just a reality of the gig that you could always do a better job, but worrying about things like that, overthinking, means you never get anything done. Yeah. And the idea is to create things and put it out. And sometimes you're gonna put things out and people are gonna respond to it positively, and sometimes they're gonna respond negatively. And even there's things that I've done that I might have spent like 1,000 hours on and no one liked it. And then there can be stuff I drew in like no time and everyone's like, yeah, it's the greatest thing I've ever seen. You have no control over the way people respond to your artwork. You just have to put it out there and just say, I did that, move on to the next thing. And if that wasn't good enough, the next one will be even better. But you have to finish things. That is the most important thing. So even when you're creating stuff, you meet a lot of young artists and writers who want to create these like large, epic stories that span 100 issues. This is my grand, whatever the hell. Nah, do something that you can get done and put that out there. Trying to do those epic things, you're never gonna get them done. Yeah. It's more important that you finish things, put them out, and move on to the next. And the worrying never goes away. It's fine. Just internalize it. You know what I'm saying? Just embrace that, because that's what makes you a stronger artist. Because if you were happy with everything, you would never get any better.
Yeah.
So.
You watch baking shows?
What?
Do you watch baking shows?
Not really.
You should watch baking shows, because that's how you kind of have to think about it. Because baking is like, it's chemistry, it's science, but the oven doesn't care.
Yeah.
You have to put it in there, and it has to come out at a certain time, and it's gonna be good or it's gonna be nasty, you know. But what you're gonna do is learn from it, you know. But you're putting that constraint on yourself. It's there already, you know. It's like you put this mix together. You're making a souffle, you're making cupcakes, and it's just gonna come out how it comes out. But you just need to be prepared to treat it in that way. So that's something that I actually applied to myself recently, because I'm not kidding. I feel you personally. I'm very much like that. But I've started treating it like that, where it's just like, I know the path that I have to go down to get to here, and then I just need to push it out, you know, and see what happens.
So I would say 2 pieces of advice. One, so there was a time I was writing a weekly column for a website, and so every Monday at 6 o'clock, this thing had to go up. And because I'm crazy, I would do the research for like 3-4 days, but I wouldn't start writing this thing until like Monday at 4. No, like Monday at like 1, because I had to get it in by 3 so they could put it up by 6. And I kind of got that from this writer named Tim Ferriss, who wrote a book I think it's called The 4-Hour Work Week. And what he says is, give yourself a limited amount of time to do something, because what that does is it eliminates the time for navel gazing, right? Like, I gave myself 2 hours, and I was like, I know story, I know narrative, I know 3 acts. I'm gonna write this thing in 2 hours. Even if it goes in a direction that I didn't expect, and that happened a bunch, but I got it done. Do that again and again and again, and it'll start to become natural for you. The second piece of advice that I have, going to something that Khary said, do something that you can finish, which is start small. So back in the day, I used to write these pitches to Marvel and whatever, and I spoke to a writer, and he was like, can you get your idea down in 1 sentence? And then he was like, okay, now take that 1 sentence and turn it into a paragraph. Now take that paragraph and turn it into a page. Like, if you can deal with the smallest unit, every increment of time up, you realize is an eternity. So there's so much pressure for something to be perfect, but like you said, just start something and finish it. And the more you start something and finish it, the more you will understand how capable you are. You know, it's tough. It's a lot of pressure. You want stuff to be perfect, and like you said, like it's never going to be perfect.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah.
This is kind of going back to the previous question the gentleman over here asked before about the financing situation. I know a lot of families that usually start, like a lot of creators that start in comic books, kind of don't see a lot of residuals coming back to them all the time or to their families. Is there a way to kind of go about that to kind of solidify your footprint to actually make it come to you in terms of, like, let's say, for instance, we don't end up like Joe Shuster or Jerry Siegel in terms of their kind of situation. Like, I want to see, like, let's say, for instance, I want to create a comic book. I want to see my family kind of succeed in terms of seeing the profits that come from what I create. Is there a way to kind of solidify that so not only do I eat, but my children eat and their children eat when they get older? Like, to kind of keep something to stay with your family and kind of keep a legacy for yourself going on.
Lawyer?
Yeah.
Don't sell it. Like, some things you just got to keep for yourself and see if you can produce it on your own, you know, or again, going back to the lawyer, make sure that the contract that you're signing is beneficial to you in the long run. That's the person who's going to look out for you. I mean, that's as simple as it is.
Yeah, that's the truth. Yeah, right? Like, yeah, I mean, you two are doing it. Like, you co-own Black, you co-own Excellence. Like, it's interesting, you know, there's a term intellectual property. Like, actually think about it like real estate, right? Like, this is a thing that I own. The purpose of that is in part financial empowerment that, like, I can pass down, right? Those things are solidified through contracts, estate planning, wills, all that boring stuff, right? You have to be willing to get into the boring stuff. So you either need to know business or you need to know people who know business so they can advise you. So those things that you don't know about, like, seek out help. You know, and again, like, you know, talk to peers. So the same way, like, you're needing to, you know, these gentlemen are active entrepreneurs. Like, how did they secure that? How do you secure that? But yeah, it all starts with a lawyer.
And just for
reference, you can find templates for contracts online. So even if you don't have a lawyer, you can go ahead and both get copyright for your property as well as at least get, you know, a boilerplate contract, and you can also turn to the City Tech faculty here to take a look at that for you and just kind of guide you.